Asatyere satya torimani Nitya karuna habe Braje Radha Krishna habe Nitya karuna habe Braje Radha Krishna bhave Dharo nitai charana dukhani Dharo nitai charana dukhani Nitaya charana satya Tahara sevaka nitya Nitaya Nitai pada sada koro asha Nitai sada koro Narottama boro duki Nitai more koro suki Narottama boro duki Nitai more koro suki Rakho ranga charanera asha Rakho ranga charanera pasha Nitai pada kamala Koti chanda sushitala Nitai pada kamala Koti chanda sushitala Dechaya jagata jura Dechaya jagata jura The lotus feet of Lord Nityananda are a shelter where one will get the soothing moonlight, not only of one, but of millions of moons. If the world wants to have real peace, it should take shelter of Lord Nityananda. Unless one takes shelter under the shade of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, it will be very difficult for him to approach Radha Krishna. If one actually wants to enter into the dancing party of Radha Krishna, he must firmly catch hold of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. Anyone who has not established his relationship with Nityananda Prabhu is understood to have spoiled his valuable human birth. Such a human birth is actually an uncontrollable animal. Because he never uttered the holy name of Nityananda, he has become merged into so-called material happiness. What can his useless education and family tradition do to help him? Being maddened after false prestige and identification with the body, one is thinking, oh, what is Nityananda? What can he do for me? I don't care. The result is that he is accepting something false to be truth. If you actually want to approach the association of Radha Krishna, you must first achieve the mercy of Lord Nityananda. When he is merciful toward you, then you will be able to approach Radha Krishna. Therefore, you should firmly grasp the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. The lotus feet of Nityananda are not illusion, they are a fact. One who engages in the transcendental loving service of Nityananda is also transcendental. Always try to catch the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. This Narottam Das is very unhappy. Therefore I am praying to Lord Nityananda to make me happy. My dear Lord, please keep me close to your lotus feet. Shri Nityananda Prabhu ki jai. So, today we're going to speak on the pastimes and exalted character of Srila Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj. And first, we wanted to set the scene for what is this realm of Paramahamsa Bhajananandis and understand from our limited perspective a little bit about how they are performing their activities within this temporary material world, while simultaneously being completely absorbed in the transcendental reality. So in Srimad Bhagavatam 4.13.10, we can read the pastimes of Jada Bharat, which was the incarnation of Bharat Maharaj, who was the great emperor, and then later on he became Jada Bharat. And you can read about his pastimes in Srimad Bhagavatam 4th canto. And in chapter 13.10 this verse appears. Utkala, or otherwise known as Jada Bharat, appeared to the less intelligent persons on the road to be foolish, blind, dumb, deaf and mad, although actually he was not so. He remained like fire covered with ashes, without blazing flames. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In order to avoid contradiction, botheration and unfavourable situations created by materialistic persons. There's no way to make it more easy to read. Can everybody read that? It's a bit hard on the screen. Maybe when the sun goes down a bit more.
We can read it. I put the thing on the...
Turn the lights off.
Oh, you want to try to turn the lights off as well? Yeah.
Yeah.
The projector's on full blast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Middle switch. Middle switch is on. Keep going.
That's it. That's what we want. You want it off. Maybe a little bit different.
Is that better?
Slightly, but there's a very big light just behind that. Those stained glass windows. The sun I'm talking about. So no, we can't turn that off.
The sun.
Yeah. So I'm in a little bit transcendental mood this morning, meditating on Vamsidas Babaji. So, purport by Srila Prabhupada. Factually, the less intelligent consider such saintly persons to be mad, deaf or dumb. Factually, an advanced devotee avoids speaking with persons who are not in devotional life. But to those who are in devotional life, he speaks in friendship, and he speaks to the innocent for their enlightenment. For all practical purposes, the whole world is full of non-devotees. And so one kind of very advanced devotee is called Bhajananandi. And we can see also, we have the picture here of Srila Sukadeva Goswami. And when Srila Sukadeva Goswami, he was so indifferent to how people perceived him in the world that he was followed by all kinds of village children and silly boys throwing old food at him and just all kinds of stuff, and he just didn't care less. He was just walking. And when he walked into the assembly at Naimisharanya, he walked in and everyone could see all the great sages had come. Narad Muni, Vyasadeva was there, all the great sages, demigods even had come because they'd heard that Maharaj Parikshit was going to sit down and fast to death on the bank of the Ganges for 7 days. So the whole universe, all the great sages had come to hear because they knew that Maharaj Parikshit was going to hear the absolute truth. And when Shukadeva Goswami walked in, because of the state of his physiognomy of his body, they could understand he was a Mahapurush. And everybody stood up. And all of these young boys and village people that were throwing things at him just kind of melted away. It's like, whoa. As he stood up, everyone stood up except Narada Muni, his guru, his father Vyasadeva. Everybody paid great obeisance to him, shook his hand, and then put him on this great exalted Vyasasana with thousands of all the demigods sitting there listening to him. So immediately everyone could understand what was his position. But up to that point, he was just simply walking. He didn't even care for clothes or anything. So this is another example of a Paramahamsa that is completely transcendental to everything in this world. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the spiritual master of our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, he said that Srila Jagannath Das Babaji, Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji and Srila Vamsidas Babaji are always worshipable by aspiring Vaishnavas. So we know that on our altar, we worship in our Guru Parampara Gurukishore Das Babaji Maharaj, and you'll see Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj there, and Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj is also included as these great Paramahamsa Babajis in our great Gaudiya tradition. And it would be remiss not to note that as we talk about the activities of such transcendental, exalted Vaishnavas that are beyond the influence of material nature and totally absorbed in the Leela and acting in a way that they're indifferent to the activities of this material world. Before we go into that realm, it's worthwhile to note first that this is only a stage that can be exhibited by advanced devotees, very advanced, exalted Vaishnavas can exhibit these kinds of activities. But for the general devotees, for us who are practicing, trying to develop our spontaneous devotion and acting in a regulated way in our devotional service, Rupa Goswami has given this very important verse. Shruti smriti puranadi pancharatriki vidim vina akaintiki harer bhakti utpattayaiva kalpate. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.101. Any devotional service which has no reference with Shruti smriti purana and pancharatra is simply a disturbance. And we can see in the lives of these great Babajis like Gurukishore, Das Babaji, Jagannath Babaji, Vamsidas Babaji, that everything they spoke was in accord with the Vedas. Everything they spoke, their words were simply the Shrutis, the Smritis, the Puranas. Their entire life was absorbed in that. But for those who are not on that platform, they cannot imitate that. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that those on the higher stage of spontaneous love do not want any restriction to their free-flowing, ecstatic love of the Lord, because they're in a spontaneous, direct, personal interaction, pastime relationship with the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. And so the rules and regulations actually become a hindrance to their service. So of course this is not to be imitated, but is a state of consciousness absorption only achieved by the most elevated devotees in pure Krishna prema, love of Godhead. So we want to first of all acknowledge where most of the information from this presentation has come from a wonderful work by Bhakti Vikas Swami called Srila Vamsidas Babaji, which you can read many more pastimes there. And one disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Jati Shekhar Prabhu, he was the source of a number of these pastimes, and he actually directly served Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj and travelled with him for several months and actually kept a diary. So these are all true, factual, historical accounts of what happened by somebody who was there, who was writing a diary at the time. Just like Chaitanya Charitamrita has written predominantly early pastimes from the diaries of Murari Gupta Prabhu, and later pastimes the diaries of Swarup Damodar Goswami and Raghunath Das Goswami. So people were there, they saw the pastime and they wrote down, and we're hearing that direct evidence, direct testimony. So in the same way, Jati Shekhar Prabhu was directly kept a diary of his travels with Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj. So Srila Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj appeared in Majipur, which is a district of modern-day Bangladesh, in 1859. And his childhood, he was known as Bhairab Chandra. He was the son of very poor fishermen, very, very poor, lived day to day by just selling whatever fish they could catch. There was no question of any education or any kind of comforts of life. And he took Diksha from his family's guru, Narottam Das Babaji, who was a spiritual master coming in the lineage of Narottam Das Thakur Mashaya. So sometimes we hear that the family gurus may not be Vaishnavas, they may not be coming in a lineage, but although we can see it was a very simple birth in the house of a fisherman, But actually the family guru was a Babaji coming directly in the line of Srila Narottam Das Thakur. So very, very fortunate. At sunset, Bhairab Chandra would return home, go to the ashram of his guru and hear the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Krishna. And although these pastimes were imparted in the simple village dialect of this area, he learned about the temporary nature of material life, and he learned many of the wonderful songs of Srila Narottam Das Thakur. But seeing Bhairab's growing indifference to worldly affairs, because he just began to become more and more absorbed in hearing the pastimes of the Lord from his guru, his parents arranged for him to get married, thinking that marriage would keep him home. Just like we hear from the life of Raghunath Das Goswami, that his parents, in the same way, wanting to keep him at home, had him married, but it didn't make any difference. He was already given his heart to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In a similar way, the marriage didn't stop, but it actually only increased his apathy towards the external material life. And then soon after the marriage, he left home, leaving his wife and a 6-month-old son to become a complete renunciate, Babaji. He accepted Babaji initiation from Narottam Das Babaji, who gave him the name Vamsidas. And although his previous life had no comforts, he now became severely austere. His former dress was just a tattered dhoti or gamcha, but now he wore nothing more than a kopan. After a few years, he began to travel the holy places and eventually settled in Navadvip, where he spent most of the balance of his life. This is one of only 2 existing photographs of Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj. And around 1903, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur brought his son, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who would have been about 28, 29 years old, almost 30 years old at this time, to meet Vamsidas in Navadvip. So he informed Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati of the exalted position of this great Vaishnava. And from that time, the two shared a great mutual respect for each other. Babaji Maharaj would refer to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta as Jagannathera Bimala. So in the Bengali language, as many of you know, when you add the suffix it means of that, like Gaurangera Dutipada, the lotus feet of Lord Gauranga. So he was very affectionately calling him the Bimala of Jagannath, or Jagannath's Bimala. And Bimala was the name of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the name of the Durga deity that is in the Jagannath temple. Bimala Prasad he was called. So we used to call him Jagannath Bimala. So from that time, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Vamsidas Babaji maintained a very great mutual respect and friendship throughout the rest of their time here. And sometimes Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati would visit Babaji Maharaj Kutir in Navadvip town, but he would remain at a distance and just simply offer his obeisances, not wanting to disturb the bhajan of Vamsidas Babaji. But seeing him coming, Babaji Maharaj would say, "Oh, a Manjari has come, so won't Radha also come? She will come, she will come." He's totally absorbed in the eternal realm of Vrindavan Dham. And we can read in Srimad Bhagavatam 11:18-29, which interestingly this chapter is, as it says here, a description of Varnashram Dharma. So the whole chapter is about the duties of the Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, what they should do, what they shouldn't do, duties of Grihastas, duties of all these different parts of society. But within that, there is a verse that describes the behavior of a Paramahamsa, right? That somebody who's actually beyond Varnashram. So Krishna in his instructions in 11th canto is giving the instruction or describing for us what actually is a person who is beyond Varnashram, truly beyond Varnashram. So he says there, Krishna himself is speaking this, although most wise, the Paramahamsa may play like a child, oblivious to honor and dishonor. Although most expert, he may behave like a stunted, incompetent person. Although most learned, he may speak like an insane person. And although a scholar, learned in Vedic regulations, he may behave in an unrestricted manner. So we know in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Matra svashas tu konteya sitosha sukadukada agama paino nityas tam stitikshasa bharata. That Krishna is saying that we should tolerate honor and dishonor, but we can see that when he describes the Paramahamsa, he uses the word in Sanskrit, he says oblivious. So we're trying to come to that stage, but they're completely already totally oblivious to honor or dishonor. We can see that in the pastimes further on. So Srila Vamsidas Babaji was a true Avadut. And even among Avaduts, he was unique. Although physically present in the world, he had very little connection with this world of birth, death, old age and disease. None at all, actually. He had no connection. He was about 6 feet tall, his hair and beard were unkempt, and he hardly ever bathed. He only wore a simple loincloth or kopan and nothing else. Totally disinterested in the activities of the world. And as I said before, there's only 2 known photographs of Vamsidas Babaji, and this is the other one we can see here. You can see him walking along the road here. Later on we'll see that he always carried his Gopal Didi with him, Bala Gopal. He was in the parental rasa, so he was in the mood of the parent of Krishna. And you can see in his right hand there, it's a bit blurry, so we can't say for sure, but it appears from the descriptions that this is very likely him carrying his Bala Gopal Didi, because wherever he went, he would carry the Didi just like a father would carry his care for his son. So although he sometimes fasted for many days, not even taking water, he was very healthy and strong, and often his companions couldn't keep up with his walking, even when he was in his 80s. Babaji Maharaj's speech was often incoherent, with little apparent connection between one sentence and the next. However, it was always clear that everything he said was related to Krishna. Incoherent for us, not for Krishna. Krishna understood everything. Often he would spontaneously cry out various names of Krishna. He would especially exclaim, Bhaktavatsala Hari and Pranavallabha Hari. He would prolonging the second syllable of Hari, Hari, and plaintively fading out, crying out for Krishna. Sometimes he chanted these names resoundingly and repetitively for a long time. So we can read. This is very, very common for Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj too. People would ask him questions or something, and he would just start crying out these names of Krishna, Bhaktavatsala Hari, and just over and over again with great feeling, intense love of God, love of Krishna. And Babaji Maharaj would narrate the stories of Gaura Leela and Krishna Leela, jumping from one to another, and occasionally he laughed long and loud about these pastimes. He would recite the songs of Narottam Das Thakur in a unique style, and he especially liked Nitai Pada Kamala, which he usually chanted at least daily. So this song we just chanted, so this is the difference between a soul who is on the liberator platform completely absorbed in service to Krishna. They're daily chanting these songs, not daily but continually chanting. And this is why the sadhana bhakti process is that we absorb ourselves with our intelligence. We know, right, let's chant these names, let's chant this holy name, let's chant these bhajans of the great acharyas regularly every day if we can. And by that we're jump-starting, if you want to say, like jump-starting a car, we're jump-starting our devotion. We're trying to act in the way that the pure devotees are naturally acting. So naturally, continually, and at least every day he would sing that bhajan we just sang once. When's the last time we sang that bhajan? Who knows, right? Definitely not every day. He was singing that every single day. He would sing that song to Lord Nityananda. he would repeatedly sing the line, Nitya Karuna Habe, Braje Radha Krishna Bhave. By the mercy of Lord Nityananda, one can attain Radha Krishna in Vrindavan. And sometimes after singing these lines, he would sing out his own emotions and then again quote more lines. So he wasn't just reading off the bhajan, just singing the bhajan. He was absorbed in the mood and the meaning, and then he would put his own ecstatic emotions and ecstatic words and pastimes into these bhajans, and then again start quoting more lines. So it was just a continual outpouring of his ecstatic love for Krishna that anybody who was in his presence would experience. Babaji Maharaj devoted his whole existence to his deities. In a ramshackle bhajan kutir in Navadvip town, he worshipped his deities Sri Gauranitai, Sri Radha Govinda and Bala Gopal. He was always absorbed in Vatsalya Rasa or parental devotion, and he was especially devoted to his Gopal deity, whom he carried everywhere in his right hand and tended like a father caring for his darling child. Sometimes when we're trying to understand the science of Krishna consciousness, and in our mind, in our intelligence especially, we try to understand what is devotion for a personal God, and then at the same time we bring in this idea of, but God is everything, He's the Lord of everything. And then our minds kind of go over, how can He be like my son or my friend, and then He's the Lord of everything. But we can see when we read the pastimes of Krishna book, or we hear pastimes like Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj, great souls like this, that the Yoga Maya is covering, or it's not manifesting that Vaikuntha bhava, the bhava of God is great, He is great. It's the Yoga Maya is covering the devotee so that he can simply absorb himself in that relationship with Krishna, right? He's absorbed in that relationship as a parent. And of course he's not thinking, oh, this is the Lord of everything, He can do everything. That would get in the way of his feeling. So great devotees like this, they're always absorbed in that feeling of parent. Just like once Jagannath Mishra, the father of Lord Chaitanya, he had a dream, and in his dream a Brahmana came and said, why are you taking so much care? Why are you chastising Nimai? You're making sure he eats. Why you're making sure he does all his lessons and everything? He's the Supreme Lord. He's the source of all knowledge. Why are you doing this? And Jagannath Mishra sort of thought for a second, then he broke out of it, back into his position as the father of the Lord, and he said, anyway, he may be God, that's another thing, but he's my son, and if I don't chastise him, if I don't correct him, he won't grow up right. So he immediately went back to his position. So like this, we can understand a little bit about the Yoga Maya, about the ecstatic absorption. And if we try to develop our devotion at the same time, thinking that the Lord, He's God of everything, then there's some be difficult to put that in the mind. So we do that we have to do that in our stage. We have to understand how the Lord is great. We understand all these things theoretically. We hear about the greatness of God, how He's manifested this material world through all these different energies. And at the same time, we try to just put that aside when we're chanting, trying to hear the holy name, when we're trying to worship Krishna, we just we focus on just hearing the holy vibration of the holy name, and then we further develop our dormant love for Krishna. So Babaji Maharaj would hardly speak to anyone except his deities, with whom he would converse with all day long, especially his Gopal deity. And if he did interact with others, it was usually indirectly through comments to his deities. So people would talk to him and then say to his deities, But he would very, very rarely directly interact with others of this world. There was no formality in his worship. There was no mantras or ringing of bells. He would simply offer the food to his deities by placing it before them. He never put them to rest or woke them, right? So this is the spontaneous love of resident Vrindavan. He's living there in the spiritual world. He doesn't need to, just like the cowherd boys, they don't start chanting mantras to give Krishna some sweets to share their lunch. They're just sharing. They're on that platform. His principal method of worship was simply to live with his deities, to see them and talk with them in a most intimate and informal manner. Sometimes laughing, sometimes quarreling with them even. Occasionally indicating Gopal, he would angrily order his associates, "Put him out, get him out from here." And once while cooking, Babaji Maharaj told his deities, "Just wait, I'm still cooking." A little later he said, "You go outside, get outside." Any parents have said things like this? Yes. So he's living in that. And people who will experience his association could immediately see, this was nothing false. He was directly interacting with Krishna. Directly. He would be absorbed in this bhava all through the day. Sometimes he would stop talking, apparently listening to their response, and then resume talking. Nobody else could hear what Krishna was saying to him, but they could see that he was having a conversation with his deity, with his Gopal. Once Srila Prabhupada, he mentioned this, and this is a common knowledge through the line of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, disciples, and all the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, that this exalted Paramahamsa Vamsidas Babaji, he was always talking to his deities. And when Srila Prabhupada, he was installing deities in Los Angeles in 1969, he made this statement. He said, "If you think that this is a brass-made idol, then it will remain a brass-made idol to you forever. But if you elevate yourself to a higher platform of Krishna consciousness, then Krishna, this Krishna, will talk with you. This Krishna will talk with you." There is a Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj. He was talking with his deity. When Babaji Maharaj would go out, he would leave the door to the Bhajan Kuti open, and many times some of the possessions were stolen. Devotees asked him to put a lock on the door, to which he replied, "If the owner doesn't watch over the house, then what can Vamsidas do?" Or he would point to Gaurnitai and say, "If the residents of the house are thieves, what is the use of putting a lock?" So these very transcendental relationships with these deities. And once when 2 cooking pots were stolen, he scolded Gaurnitai and did not feed them at all that day. The next day a pot was donated, to which Babaji Maharaj said, "This pot is Nitai's, so today he will get food. If Gora is to eat, he must bring his own pot." And that day he cooked and fed Nitai, but not Gora. Hare Krishna. Again, we cannot understand, we cannot see. We're doing our regulated worship of the deities. We're gradually increasing our devotion, but we can appreciate to some extent what is the level of devotion, what is the ultimate goal, the ultimate goal of bhakti yoga is being displayed by such great souls in this material world for us to see with our own eyes. Direct personal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when travelling to Puri or Vrindavan, Babaji Maharaj would carry Gopal in his hand, while his servants would wrap and cover his other deities. And when he travelled, either by boat or a cart or whatever, he would constantly talk with his Gopal deity. And after reaching his destination, his helpers would erect the tent, and he would spend endless hours in the tent with his deity. He never took interest in the place or its inhabitants. He was happy to be with the Lord and wanted nothing more than that. And after the disappearance of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, one of his disciples, who was called Ananta Vishwambara, approached Babaji Maharaj for shelter and guidance, but only very gradually did Vamsidas Babaji allow him into his inner circle. And this Ananta Vishwambara would read Chaitanya Charitamrita for Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj in a place near his kuti, and he especially loved the talks between Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy, and he would profusely cry while hearing these pastimes. So once Babaji Maharaj was singing a bhajan that expressed how love for Krishna sometimes burns like fire, yet also may chill like ice. He had converted the original Bengali into his native dialect in his ecstasy. This devotee, Ananta Vishwambara, who was cooking nearby, heard this and recited the original Bengali in a corrective tone. So he's like correcting Babaji Maharaj, saying, no, this is actually how the verse goes. To which Babaji Maharaj angrily took a stick from the fire and approached him as if to beat him. Babaji no sound? Hare Krishna. Sound? Yeah, came back. So Babaji Maharaj, he was giving the purport, he was experiencing the pastimes, he was experiencing that.
It'll go off again.
Oh, is it? The battery?
Yeah.
Thank you. And he was experiencing that and giving the meaning. Sometimes if you're careful and listen, sometimes Srila Prabhupada actually does this. Many times he does this, right? You'll see he'll quote a verse, and he'll say the verse, but he'll actually say the meaning to the verse, and some of the words might kripa instead of karuna, or there may be some change, but Prabhupada is actually speaking the verse, the meaning of it. He's speaking, he's not reciting a sloka. That's why, I mean, for us as aspiring devotees, if we can learn these slokas and learn the meaning of the words from all these slokas, how absorbing it is for us. And as the years go by, that realization becomes deeper and deeper, right? And we're actually hearing the verse, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhya Kabunai Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Karaya Uday. We're hearing the words of Krishna, of Lord Chaitanya, what he's actually saying. So it's very purifying also for us to do that. But we can see that Srila Prabhupada, many times he would do this. He would speak a verse and the meaning of the verse was there, but not sometimes the exact, he would put one Sanskrit word that meant the same thing instead of another one. Sometimes you can hear on his lectures he's doing this. So in the same way, Vamsidas Babaji, he wasn't reciting slokas, like, blah, blah, blah. No, he was actually speaking them, and he would speak them in his original Bengali language. So when he was corrected that, no, that's not right, this is how it goes, he was like, what? So very, very transcendental. Once someone at his kutir started singing a popular, newly invented mantra, Vamsidas stopped him and said, no, that name is not allowed here. Sing concocted mantras and it have to be from Chaitanya Charitamrita, from Narottam Das Thakur, like these authorized acharyas. Otherwise, once Babaji Maharaj heard a boatman singing a popular Vaishnav song that means, a spear has entered my heart, I've neither been killed nor can I survive. I'm talking about separation from Krishna. And Babaji Maharaj said to him that without any realization, you're simply enjoying the singing. But when we hear this, our heart is pierced. You are merely singing, but my heart is breaking. So once while returning to his ashram, but still some distance away, he said, Gaurnitai is hungry. And he obtained some eggplant, and when he reached his ashram, he offered the eggplant, just covered in some coconut husk, didn't even cook it, just offered the eggplant with some tulsi and water. And then he sang this ecstatic song, an arti song to Gaurnitai in his native language, native dialect. His voice was quivering, his eyes were full of tears for love for Gaura. And then after the offering he sat under a tree and honoured the prasadam with great relish. We think of the pastime of when Vidura was visited by Lord Krishna, and in his ecstasy he was giving the banana peel and Krishna was eating the peel with great satisfaction. So if anybody's ever eaten raw eggplant, it is not a materially, wonderfully, tasty thing. Just raw eggplant. Raw. But he was eating with such relish because Gaura had accepted his offering and eaten that. So this is prasad. So in the diary that Jati Shekhar Prabhu kept, we mentioned previously, he noted that in the 3 months he travelled with Babaji Maharaj, he never once saw him go to defecate, urinate or bathe. He also observed that Babaji Maharaj would travel on the road. As he would travel on the road, many villagers would understand immediately he was a Mahapurusha, exalted Paramahamsa, and they would arrange a festival in his honour. But Babaji Maharaj never cared for their arrangements and would just simply continue his journey. So we can look in our own hearts and imagine if we were going along the road and the villagers or the people were so happy to see us. They said, come, we want to have a festival to honour you and hear your realizations about Krishna consciousness, and everybody's coming. How it would be probably how we would feel.
We run the other way.
Sorry?
We might run the other way.
Yeah, let's see. See what happens when it happens. But there may be some attraction to it. Babaji Maharaj had no attraction. Just kept walking. They'd made all these arrangements for him, but he was indifferent to it. He ate very little, only once or twice a week, and most of the time he fasted. But when he did eat, he would hand out the remnants of his food to the devotees. They wouldn't eat it, however, but carefully pack and send it to the Gaudiya Math devotees back in Mayapur who were eagerly waiting for this Mahaprasad. And also some of his prasadam was sent to the Goswamis, the Goswami Pujaris of the Radharaman temple in Vrindavan. And they would eagerly honour that Mahaprasad of Vamsidas Babaji, even though it had apparently spoiled in the journey. So in other words, his fame as a Paramahamsa, exalted, liberated Vaishnava, was well known far and wide. Let's see how many slides we have, because we only have... let's just keep going. Once while returning from Puri, Babaji Maharaj arrived at Balasore on Janmashtami, and he told Gopal that so last year Janmashtami you had palm fruit, today you'll have mango. And just a few minutes later, a school teacher named Yogendranath Mukherjee, following a dictation he had in a dream, so he had a dream that said, take some mangoes to this great soul Vamsidas Babaji. So he had a dream and he brought these mangoes. And Babaji Maharaj offered to his deities. And very soon after the offering, when the school teacher was there, he started to talk to his Gopal. Now count. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And then he would ask the Gopal, okay, so out of 30 letters, if the 3 sars are missing, how many is left? 22. So you could see that because the school teacher had come, he was a mathematics teacher, he thought, all right, now's a good time to give some education to Gopal. So in the presence of the school teacher, he thought he was inspired to impart some education to young Gopal. While Babaji Maharaj was staying near the western gate of the Jagannath temple, some brahmacharis from the Gaudiya Math visited him. And there they performed very loud sankirtan with many mridangas and very loud kirtan. And after that kirtan, Babaji Maharaj said, in Bengali, he said, Tapa tapa hari kol bhate buk bhate na, which means, by chanting and meditating, by your loud kirtan, you're breaking the mridanga, but your heart is not breaking. So like this he was saying to the devotees. And when the assembled devotees, the brahmacharis, heard that, they all paid obeisances to Maharaj, and then sat at his lotus feet very silently to take his association. Like this, Babaji Maharaj would give very insightful instructions with just a few words to everybody, anybody that he blessed with his instruction. So, in his travels, Babaji Maharaj returned to his birthplace at Mijapur, in present-day Bangladesh, shortly before his departure from the world. And at 8 o'clock in the evening of the 23rd day of Shravan, Shukla Chaturthi, which is today, Chaturthi, corresponding to 23rd of July 1944, Paramahamsa Srila Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj concluded his pastimes in this world and returned to Goloka Vrindavan to continue his eternal service to Lord Sri Krishna. And after hearing all these incredible pastimes of his deity worship and his how he would act, it's useful to revisit these verses that for us who are on this platform, this is not something that we can imitate. We have to perform our instructions according to the instructions of the Shastra. We have the Chaitya Guru, we have the Paramatma is in our heart, but we also have a lot of other things in our heart, right? So we can't just trust our feeling, we can't just trust our emotion is always spiritual. So we may have some spiritual emotion that comes from time to time, and then there's other things, anattas are in our heart, right? So these great souls who are just simply living with Krishna purely in their heart and manifesting everything in a free-flowing way, we cannot imitate that, or we'll simply become degraded because we'll follow the materialistic tendencies of our heart as well, right? So this is a state of consciousness that it can only be achieved by elevated devotees in pure Krishna consciousness, not something that neophyte devotees can... I don't know if I should repeat this, but there was one devotee that Srila Prabhupada gave a Babaji initiation, only one devotee, because he had cancer, he had terminal cancer. And I'm sure Krishna Rupa Mataji knows this story. Were you in Mayapur at the time? No. This is... Okay. Yeah, so one devotee had the terminal cancer, he was going to die in some months. So Prabhupada said, okay, gave him the Babaji initiation, and he just let him just chant, just go to Mayapur and just chant. But that devotee soon after found out that he wasn't actually terminal case, and then he quickly went back to America and got a job and pursued his material aspirations. Right? You remember that? So I'm just mentioning that, and we don't like to mention these kind of things, but just mentioning that to caution us that we can't even subtly pretend that we're on these kind of elevated platforms. We have to be very careful in following the instructions the acharyas have given us in our devotional service to attain the ultimate goal. So I'd like to humbly beg forgiveness from Paramahamsa Srila Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj for any offences that I may have committed in relating his transcendental pastimes. I clearly have no qualification to describe his pastimes, which are all beyond this material realm and our material intelligence, but we are duty bound to attempt to glorify such exalted Vaishnavas for our own purification. We pray that Babaji Maharaj may shower his blessings on us all, so that we may one day experience even a drop of his ecstatic, spontaneous, pure love for the most merciful Sri Sri Gauranitai and the divine couple, Sri Sri Radha Krishna, in the transcendental realm of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Jai Paramahamsa Sri Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Thank you very much for coming. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. 44.
44. That's not
Yeah.
very far away.
No, that's right. He was contemporary of Bhaktisiddhanta and Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He was born in what, 59, so he was like 80 something, so yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we sort of see photos like that, you know, that's years old, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's only what, less than 100 years ago, right? 80 years ago or something.
1944, it said.
1944, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not 100 years ago, is it?
No.
Yeah, exactly, it's not long ago at all.